Hello, Management 575 students. This is Dr. John Robinson kicking off the class with our first video lecture. So, I posted the syllabus to the Moodle page. Exciting. So, please go take a look. There are 4 major deliverables for this class. These are the 4 and their relative percentages and your overall grade for the course. This isn't the order you'll create them. Actually, the Inspiring Entrepreneur paper is first in the schedule. The knowledge competence exams occur throughout the semester, basically on your own time. It's just something you have to check off your list at some point during the next summer term. And then the narrated slide deck is comes before the investment analysis, since the investment analysis will be done on the output from your classmates. So I'm going to go through each of these assignments, just some of the details about them, just so you know what's coming. So the narrated slide deck will be a 10-minute presentation simulating a pitch to investors. So this is in the style of presentations that are actually used to attempt to acquire venture capital funding during the Y Combinator demo day. There's some examples of these sort of videos online. It's really, they tend to be voice over PowerPoint, but really move at a pretty fantastic clip. So you should just take a look and see, just to get a feel for how they work. But the idea is to basically just to pitch a business idea, to demonstrate that you understand both the pros and cons, and what would be attractive to investors about something that you would be considering. Again, there's no commitment to do anything entrepreneurial in the class. The idea is to commit to an entrepreneurial mindset for evaluating business ideas, right? So we'll learn to have that critical eye and to think about the specific challenges any particular plan might have, and that way you'll be prepared in the future, if you have entrepreneurial aspirations, to apply that same kind of critical thinking to your business plans and thoughts or others. So this is just the first attempt at that, and the deliverable is a narrated slide deck. So we'll probably the easiest way in this day and age is to just create a PowerPoint and then do a Zoom call to yourself and record it. There are other recording options that, I use Open Broadcaster System. It's free and works well. So there's lots of ways, but the idea is to get, a video of your presentation that fellow students could review for their investment analysis. So we'll go over how to, the details of the technology there, but in principle, right, it's just to get a PowerPoint presentation presented over a Zoom call, not live on your own time, that we as a class will review later. So that's the first one. The second is then an analysis of those videos. So we're not going to all watch everyone's, but you'll pick, I think, like your 7 favorites probably, or maybe we'll make sure that everyone gets at least a few people reviewing their videos. But the idea is to search among a set of investment opportunities with their presentations, and then pick the 2 that you feel will be best as a business venture. And the idea then is to be able to explain, using language and skills from the class, why you find those 2 in particular to be compelling as business propositions. So it's a chance to demonstrate the kind of thinking that we'll learn in this class, using, business opportunities that don't exist or that have never been seen before. The grade for the investment analysis will really be dependent on the depth, accuracy, and clarity of what you present, especially with regard to the content from this course and the kind of analysis we'll learn about doing. So that seems a little vague now because you haven't seen any of it, but the idea is to take the ideas and apply them, and if they're applied well, you'll do well, and if they're not, you won't. Knowledge content exams are multiple choice exams administered on Moodle. They're just really meant to represent a summary of topics, right? So there are just some things to know, like for example, thinking about different legal structures businesses can take on, different types of financing that might be relevant for certain businesses and not others, right? So there's some base knowledge we need to work from before we get creative. And so this just makes sure that you've checked those boxes. Again, it's take on your own time. You can try them in as many times as you like. You just have to, you have to get to be good enough at them that you can sit down and take an exam and do well with it. Obviously, I mean, you're on your own, so these are open note, but they will be timed, so you can't just spend forever on them. But so anyway, it's kind of the point is to take the notes, take the lectures, take the reading material, and learn it, internalize it, and then be able to represent that on a multiple choice exam. The last deliverable is an inspiring entrepreneur paper. So this is where we get a chance to get into the morality of entrepreneurship a little bit and also to tie it into real life experiences of entrepreneurs. So this is the one that comes first, and it's just to think about an entrepreneur of note or interest and write a brief history of that individual and how their experience might be helpful to modern entrepreneurs. Right? So putting in context what these past experiences and how we might benefit from them. So APA citation of sources is expected. I'm actually not super picky about style guide. If you want to do Chicago or MLA, whatever you're used to, that's fine. Like I know at least those three style guides fairly well. I'm not going to be super helpful on style guide specific feedback because it's not really the point of this course. But if the goal is to just not confuse me with how you're citing things. I should be able to understand like where this came from, what year was the source, who wrote it, and specifically because then I might go track those down. Especially if there's URLs, citing those appropriately and then having links available is awesome because then I can go check out where we're getting stuff from. So again, style guide, slightly style guide agnostic, but make sure you do your citations clearly so I can understand where stuff comes from. All right, so those are the 4 major deliverables for the class. We have a large set of reading materials that are posted on the Moodle page and in the schedule and the syllabus. So there's quite a bit of each of the individual reading assignments is very short. I mean, it's literally a blog post most of the time, but there are quite a bit of them, so it's key to stay on top of the reading so we have meaningful things to think about at each week. So most of the reading assignments come from Paul Graham. He's a founder of ViWeb and Y Combinator, a startup accelerator, originally out of Boston, but now in Boston and San Francisco. So he's an entrepreneur, and then Fred Wilson is a prominent Silicon Valley VC, and really just an all-around nice guy from every indication. And so he had a series that he did over 2012-2013 that he called MBA Mondays for his personal blog. But the idea was, if you don't have an MBA, what are the things that MBAs know that you need to know to be a startup entrepreneur? And so that may seem a little silly to use that as content in an MBA program because you are MBA students, you are exposed to a lot of these things. But the reality is, every topic that he covers in these blog posts, marketing, management, accounting, financing, human resources, it all looks quite a bit different for a small new enterprise. So even though, for example, he has a blog post dedicated to thinking about marketing, and we'll look at some other readings about marketing. The kind of analysis that you would learn in your marketing MBA course will have some overlap, but there are also very different strategies in the startup world. For example, going personally door to door is not a strategy that makes sense if you have a marketing budget and a marketing department. But when you're a brand new company trying to validate your product, it's actually a perfectly reasonable strategy. So things that don't scale can still be very valuable in the very early stages. So it ends up just looking very different. So and you'll get a feel for that as you dive into these readings. So just to launch into some content. So this connects up. So this comes from Inc. magazine. They did a survey of successful entrepreneurs that had a master's in business administration. And they asked them, point blank, right, would they recommend an MBA program for would-be entrepreneurs? And 9 out of 10 successful entrepreneurs said that they would, right? So the skills you're learning in your broad MBA curriculum are very important to successful startup entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship in general. However, many of them come in, they come more and more relevant as the company matures, right? So in the very early stages, the kind of analytical skills you learn in an MBA program aren't coming up as often as they do later. So the most helpful courses that are mentioned by these entrepreneur CEOs are finance, accounting, and marketing. Those are the ones focused heavily on analytical tools. This is in contrast to MBA graduates who go on and have careers in large organizations. They often will cite their most important classes as organizational behavior, for example. So human-to-human interaction kind of stuff, right? Obviously, you're getting all of this content in your MBA program, but the relative importance of it can be a little different when you're working on a small new enterprise. Partly because you wear so many hats, right? So if I'm, I could be a vice president of human resources at a large organization and have a team, and really be very, very good at that one dimension of thing that I do, and I may not have to know as much about healthcare management or marketing. Whereas in a small enterprise, CEOs wear a lot of hats. So even though you're running this ship and you have a team, those type of opportunities require the more analytical type skills, because you can't outsource it because you don't have the headcount to do that. And you also need to just be aware of everything that's going on because you don't have an administrator above you to be ultimately responsible for it. So these are just quotes from the article. It said, most respondents agreed that business school taught them little about the process of establishing a new business. Establishing it, right? That's key, then growing it. Finding sources of capital, recruiting and hiring employees, scrambling to make that all-important first sale, learning how to outmaneuver larger competitors. And so these are skills that are specific to small new enterprises, and they, tend to be underserved by a general purpose MBA curriculum. There's nothing in business school that prepares you to deal with customers, invoices, and managing cash flow when money is tight, right? A lot of us work for large organizations that are very successful and long-lived. So we may go through crises, but that's very different from startup companies where you could be 1 or 2 months away from total destruction at any given moment, even when things are going really well. You can even grow yourself into death. And so it's a very different sort of experience for new businesses that are small and growing quickly. Another quote, all your human resources classes are about motivating employees, goal setting, things like that. But how do you recognize a bad decision, kill it, bite your tongue, and move on? You've got to be able to make mistakes quickly, find out and get out of them quickly. They teach you a lot about how to be a success, but not what to do when something goes wrong, when you fail, which you're going to do. And in fact, I think, right, with new businesses, failure of all types is much more likely in basically every area, right? Since it's blazing a trail in just about everything, chances of things going wrong and awry and having to redo or re-strategize or redirect or have a new approach are much more higher, more likely. And so admitting and acknowledging failure and changing direction is a really important skill that doesn't come up as much when you think about having a stable career in a large organization. So, so it highlights a few key things. So finding sources of capital, recruiting and hiring employees, scrambling to make that all-important first sale, learning how to outmaneuver larger competitors. Right? Have we heard about this yet? In your MBA program, chances are only a little, if at all, and so we're going to fix it. So it's this. We'll have time and commitment to all of these things, thinking about how to improve all of these dimensions. So let's pause for a moment and think. So in a large lecture class, if we were all together in a big room, I'd be asking a question. Well, what do you think entrepreneurship is? Like, how would you describe it? So, for the purpose of this video, right, instead, since we're doing this online, pause the movie and maybe just give yourself a one-sentence description. Just go ahead and write it down. How would you describe what entrepreneurship is? If you had a definition, or how would you talk about it? So go ahead, do that, and then we'll talk. Okay, so I have some thoughts about this, and we can see if this connects up with what you were thinking. So this comes from dictionary.com, is quoted in Forbes. Entrepreneur is a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. All right, so here's the question. So why initiative and why risk? Right? Why are those two dimensions that make it different from, so there's lots of organizing and managing that goes on. I mean, many of us in our careers are organizers and managers, right? So So according to Forbes here, the distinction between just being a manager and being an entrepreneur is this initiative and risk dimension. So why is that? So I have some thoughts. So first of all, entrepreneurship is itself a creative act, and not necessarily an innovative one. We're not always doing something dramatically different. And if you think about, for example, Walmart looks different than Montgomery Ward, but not dramatically so, right? Executing well on small things and doing a couple things subtly better or different can have a huge force magnification in an industry like retail when margins are so small. So it's not necessarily, completely out of left field, crazy different, but there is creativity involved, right? It's willing something into existence that has never been seen before, and that's a creative act. And that's why, so that's partly initiative there. And doing that requires leadership and organization at scale. It's not enough just to have an idea that's helpful and works. It has to be able to grow to serve a broad population. Right? And so that requires hustle, because growth, right? It will always start very small. So it has to grow rapidly to turn into anything. Otherwise, it will just be a very, very small thing. And we'll talk about that, right? The lifestyle businesses exist, and the growth may never come, but that's not the usual case we'll be thinking about when we're talking about entrepreneurship. So why risk? Why is risk inherently a part of this? So this is, from my favorite movie, so Ratatouille, the Pixar animated film. There's a scene toward the end of the movie where there's a critic. He's a food critic who's been very critical of the restaurant that's at the center of the film. But he's talking about the role of critics and what critics do. And he says there's one time when critics do have personal risk, and that's in the defense of the new, is the phrase he uses. And that's really important to this. Why risk? Entrepreneurship is risky, at least in part, because it is new, right? That things are unknown. There's just so much unknown. So economic outcomes are always inherently uncertain. But new ones tend to be more uncertain and have the Rumsfeld unknown unknowns, right? That we don't even know what we don't know that's gonna destroy us, and so there's just landmines everywhere because these are new things, and the business itself has a ton of uncertainty with it, but it comes with it personal risk and financial risk as well. So entrepreneurs tend to, you have to put other careers aside usually, and take a big personal financial risk that can't really easily be sent off to someone else. There's exceptions to that, but in general, we have to put a lot of our own human capital on the line at with a very high variability in outcome. Right? It's very easy to get the end of an entrepreneurial process and feel like that other than life lessons, you wasted years and tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So risk and initiative are at the heart of it for these key reasons. All right. So we've got risk, we've got initiative. There's lots of negatives here we're talking about that make this especially challenging. So why? So this is another pause the video moment. So why would anyone do entrepreneurship, or why do we even permit it to exist? What do we get out of it? What do we get as a society out of entrepreneurship? What do we personally get? Why would anyone do this? Okay, I think the number one answer that people often say is, you get your be your own boss thing. And that has a place. In fact, it often has a place with people who are very difficult personalities, right? If you're just a very difficult person and you're constantly getting fired because no one can work with you and you make them crazy and you cause problems, basically your landing place can end up being entrepreneurship, right? No one will hire you, so you have to do it on your own. And then the people who work for you get to deal with your intolerable personality, and they're willing to in exchange for money, right? So this is kind of like one angle that we often think about it, but that's not where I'm going to go here at all. So when I think why entrepreneurship, I have a couple key things that I think are really important when we think about what it does. So entrepreneurship is probably one of the biggest ways in which we change the world. So business itself is a huge force multiplier for change. Right? We can appeal to management. We can, you can imagine doing protests or trying to lobby Congress or seeking to create a nonprofit that drives change. But right, there's businesses that so profitable businesses have basically almost an inherent drive to scale to almost infinity, right? It's just if you do more, then there's more value created and more profit generated that feeds into the desire to invest more in it, and it just kind of spirals, right? So businesses themselves are probably the best thing on planet Earth at achieving scope. Now right? Scope isn't of itself inherently good or bad, right? In fact, we can see it's often very bad, right? If you can create a business that is abusive or destructive or unkind, but the potential for either good or bad is tremendous with profitable businesses, right? They can scale dramatically from nothing to world spanning in months, right? And so if we focus on the potential for business to do good at scale, there's pretty amazing opportunities there to change the world. So in particular, personal pain points. So there's many parts of our life that we just that make us crazy, and when people fix that for us, our lives get better. Right? I am a terrible driver. I fall asleep constantly. It's just the worst, right? I'm just I am so excited for the moment I get to at some point get my full self-driving Tesla to tool around town without me in charge, because everyone will just be better off, but especially my own kids, right? I'm just super bad at driving, and it's a huge pain. And I am so excited for entrepreneurship to save me from it. But we all have things like that, right? Things that we just really are sick of, don't like, and wish we didn't have to do or weren't like they were. And we are grateful and pay money to get these things fixed or changed or be better, right? So solving our pain points or making us happy, even in dumb, silly ways, right? I have a huge fondness for the fruit-flavored Tootsie Rolls. I know that's not everybody, and no one likes the vanilla ones, but I just like it. It just makes me happy, and it's a simple thing, and it doesn't cost a lot of money, and kind of everybody wins, right? Except, my blood sugar. And so it's a huge value, even just these little, like, simple luxuries or simple solutions or little things. And so thinking of that kind of service to the world, I think, is really important in the context of entrepreneurship and morality. The independence part I already talked about, but it is there and it is real, right? It does matter a lot. And for competent people, it can really unlock their potential to do amazing things. More reasons. Reward. So this is true just in terms of personal financial reward. The upside in employment is fairly predictable, right? You can climb the corporate ladder and get raises and have like a greater salary. You might be right, even could make partner at a law firm or something, but with entrepreneurship, you have this incredible upside potential that is almost never realized, right? This is like it's sort of like a lottery ticket every time you do this, but so on average. Well, so it is almost certain that any entrepreneurial activity anyone personally undertakes will be dramatically better or worse than anything they would do in a more traditional career, right? It will either be good or it will be bad, right? There's no reason that it would sort of sit in the middle. And so that makes it just very different. And another great reason to have passion about entrepreneurship is just efficiency in general. Like there's just, I think, a good set of us that just can't abide seeing something that could just be done better. And entrepreneurship is a great way to just tackle that head on and do things. So this is my personal anecdote. So in 7th grade, I had a math class, and the teacher had a grading scale where you got a 4 for an A on your homework, 3 for a B, 2 for a C, 1 for a D. Very simple, right? And then, even better, if you just did your homework, you got 4 points just for doing it. So he just, talked about how generous his grading system was, which, sounds right, except what happened was he would grade everybody's scores on a percentage scale. So if you got a C in all the homework and an A for attending class and being a good person, that would be 6 out of 8 points, which was a 75%, which was a D. Right? Let's see. No, I guess... No. It would be 66%, right? 6 out of 8. 6 out of 8. 60... Wait. Now I'm in trouble. Gotta pull up my... I remember I was really offended in middle school, so... 75... 90, right? Okay, 90 is an A, 80 is a B. Okay, so that one is okay. What was it? Okay, it was like if you got, what about, a B, that's 7 out of 8 would be a B. Well, right, if you got a C on your homework and a C on your class points, that would do it, right? Then you only have 50% of the points and you're in trouble. But yeah, and then, yeah. So anyway, so I guess he kind of had this billing of this is like this humane, really nice thing, but it was actually sort of all the same. So that just made me crazy, and I just wanted to change it. So that kind of spirit of seeing that thing that just doesn't make sense and like having a really powerful desire to shift it is part of this. So why not do entrepreneurship? What's a reason not to do it? So let's go ahead and pause and think about that. Okay, so this comes from Paul Graham, and these are his reasons why might be a really bad idea for you. So, number one is family to support. So, if you have a spouse and children that are dependent on a stable income, this is a really difficult thing to guarantee in an entrepreneurial world. Now, it depends. If you're funded for millions of dollars and you can pull a $120,000 salary out of the fundraising round, right? Then that's fine. But this is not the typical scenario, right? I mean, that would be unusual. You've won the lottery already if that's where you're at. So for most folks, you have to quit your day job and then hope for the best, and that's a really difficult thing to tell, someone with a large support burden of dependence. Right? 22-year-old, single people have more flexibility there, right? So that could be just having a family support can be a really good reason not to do it. And that's where you might have a spouse that works and then an entrepreneur or other spouse. So a reason that people often think of to do it is to be independently wealthy, and it's really not. So according to Paul Graham, it's not. There are easier ways to get there, right? If your goal is to just be wealthy so that you don't have to work, this is not the way to do it. There are safer, more boring, more effective ways to get there than entrepreneurship. Right? If you have a need for structure, that's not going to be good because there's just not going to be any structure at all in anything an entrepreneur is doing. Right? I mean, it's everything is so new and different and unique and created as it's used. So if you have a need for structure in your life, this is probably not a place for you. And if you have a fear of failure, and if you are an anxious person that doesn't like to lose, this is not good because you will definitely lose many times, lots of times. In fact, your whole enterprise will probably come crashing down and be an embarrassment to you forever with life lessons, though, right? I mean, these are just like the realities. So going in with eyes open, but it's a very real reason not to do it, right? If it very likely will cost you a bunch of money, sidestep your career, and be an embarrassing black mark on your resume forever after, and that's the most likely outcome. That's something to take very seriously when you decide to do it, right? So that's good. So we'll pause here when we come back. In the next segment we'll talk about different kinds of businesses and how they affect this entrepreneurship not decision differently.